I'm Kevin McBean. I am generally doing work in photography for the Society of York Region Artists and other competitions around York Region and beyond. But this was a perfect opportunity to introduce some of my mixed media pieces. This is the piece of work I did for this exhibition. It's called These Are Healing Times. It gave me an opportunity to talk about health and wellness through basically 60 years of the Hillary family. Hillary House to me was a fascinating place because I basically grew up in a house very similar age to this one, and my parents didn't have the foresight to keep everything for 70 or 80 years, whereas the Hillary House is just like somebody's home transported back 60 years or 70 years now, I guess, oh, probably 100 years now. It certainly has gone by quick. As I mentioned, I grew up in a house basically the same vintage as this, and we didn't have all these pieces of correspondence and books and things like that lying around, but I took a very early interest in the ones that did exist in my own family. To come into a home and find correspondence from 1917 between the doctor, the oldest son, his wife, and their oldest daughter was just fascinating to me. I wanted to get a piece of time as opposed to just a moment in time like most artwork is. And this actually allowed me to do pre-1917, 1917 in the Hillary family, and then beyond that. This was their family life up until 1917, where they were raising a number of kids. There's an active doctor's practice in the house. There was obviously lots of education and recreation and food going through the house. And that came to an abrupt change in 1916-17 when their oldest son, Dr. Hillary, went to France, leaving behind wife and family. And the blank spots represent places where the family lost contact with each other. Obviously, I don't know where exactly they are, but I know at the end when their son was killed, the father was basically in the not knowing situation in France. Even though he was the closest, he didn't have a clue what was going on. This final piece is when Dr. Hillary came back from France, quite injured, unable to resume his practice, and without his beloved son as well, who was killed in France. So the clock key represents just the passage of time for the whole family during this horrible experience for them. And his wife Edith indicated in a letter to him when he was in France that the clock had stopped working when he was gone. When I started out this piece, I actually was going to create 3 individual panels based on various family members, but I quickly realized that was sort of not going to work the way I expected, because these 3 pieces are obviously overlapping, and the family is overlapping at all times, whether they were here or overseas. The pieces that you actually see is probably more than 100 pieces of papers, original stamps, original letters, not from Hillary House, newspapers, medical journals, all those kind of things are incorporated into the work, covering off the pieces of family life. There is so much going on in the background with all of these kids as well as the doctor's practice. I think in today's era of mental health, physical health, and the healthcare system in general, you have to really think about health all the time. And when it came back to what a doctor's office might look like in 1917, and then certainly providing medical care in France in war-torn situations, it sort of all fit together for me, both the past and the present. This is all pieces of old map books, old letters, old newspapers, as much as I could incorporate into this, so it certainly fits the theme of sort of the 1917 era in the Hillary House. I have a small collection at home of various things that have been given by friends and family over the course of time, and unfortunately it largely sits in a drawer for my own use once in a while. I prefer to get it out into this type of environment where people get to see it and admire it. I think the thing that I'd ask viewers to take away is just the intricacy of the various pieces that cover off the time zone before 1917, the actual war in 1917, and then beyond that. There's so many little pieces to look at that I did provide a fairly in-depth description of the piece. It might not be the piece that you just look at and think, what is this? Unless you have some of those instructions with you.